Thank you.
Yes, well, we do have comments on that, but I think, of course, I don't want to take up your time. There are different ways of measuring things, and there is new information. And we will have the meeting on Friday. So hopefully it will be resolved and I won't be back to talk to you. But I just feel like this is so important that we just need to work on it from all angles. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for bringing it to us, Ms. Wysong. Oh. Am I muted? No. Thank you for bringing it to us, Ms. Wysong. I hope your meeting on Friday is satisfying. Okay, with that, we will move into general announcements. Any general announcements from the floor? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to approving the April minutes. Michelle sent those out with the board packet. I had a minor correction, which I sent directly to Michelle. It just was with respect to my comments, and they were responding to things that came from the floor. Were there any other revisions or comments or corrections to the minutes? If not, I will entertain a motion from the floor to approve the minutes with that small minor modification.
So move.
I think that was Casey. Any second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ally. Any discussion? All in favor? I see hands. Any opposition? I see no hands. Okay, motion carries. The minutes are approved with a minor modification. With that, we can move to the director's report. Director Long.
Great, thank you, Bonnie. Good morning, everyone. Great to be with some of you and still see many of you. I'm going to give a quick Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland update, and then talk a little bit about some council items because we have such a robust agenda. I'll try to keep it short. So Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland has begun its wave 2 of listening and learning with internal stakeholders. You probably remember that this wave will be soliciting feedback and engagement around the draft options for our mission, vision, values, and racial equity statements that were created by that work team. We'll also get feedback about some outcome categories drafted by the mission, vision, value, and racial equity team. The listening and learning team has created plans for wave 2 that include our closest internal groups. They've already done listening and learning with SMT, the senior management team. We had 2 all employee meetings last week, so that work has been completed as well. We're working with Urban Forestry Commission to ascertain how closely they want to be involved in this wave 2 listening. We will go out to the Parks Accessibility Advisory Committee and of course the Parks Board during your retreat. The listening and learning team will also be working in the community to engage centered populations. They will be hosting tabling events at community events and creating workshops that will allow for more in-depth conversations and community feedback. The other active work team, the actions and results team, is hard at work. You might remember that we're creating an actions and results framework that will link the Bureau's outcome statements to outcome measures, actions, action measures, and results. Ultimately, through this work, we want to be able to understand how we're using community investments to create real change in Portland. And this will take many years of work. So you'll be hearing about it for a long time. The Actions and Results Co-Design team has been meeting to discuss how the Bureau can measure its performance related to outcome categories and how it can link actions and results more strongly. The co-design team's spring work is complete and will inform the Bureau's work this summer when all divisions will help populate the actions and results framework and create measures that allow us to start to understand our impact on the community. I'm really excited to announce also that the Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland webpage is now live and it will be updated as our project develops. So if anybody wants to peruse that, we'll make sure to put the link in the chat. momentarily. We're also working on a digital brochure that's going to be translated into at least 4 languages: Spanish, Vietnamese, Chinese, and Russian, with other translations depending on how our listening and learning plans roll out. We're also discussing how to include additional language translation for the webpage. So that's good. We want to try to be as inclusive as we possibly can. And lastly, I'll just say that the Bureau is also revisiting the decision support tool as part of preparing for our next budget process. So this will be version 3 of the decision support tool, which will be created next month. From the beginning, we've said this is a reiterative process, and just the different iterations of the decision support tool is indicative of that. We have some upcoming council items that are related to our Bureau. They were listed on the agenda as well as in the monthly report. So I'm actually not going to go through each one because we are tight on time, but I invite anyone to, if there's any questions that any of you have regarding those upcoming ordinances and presentations, I'm happy to field any questions. I will note that there is an upcoming City Council proclamation that I wanted the board to know about because we're looking for folks to help support it. The National Park Trust has invited Portland to join them in celebrating the 12th annual Kids to Parks Day by proclaiming May 21st as Kids to Parks Day. Council will be making the proclamation on May 18th. And the mayor and Commissioner Rubio's offices have asked that we request a board member to speak at council. So if anyone's interested in highlighting language access and our pay what you can fee structure, council is hoping to uplift those particular initiatives. The time is roughly at 10:15 on May 18th. Speaking time would be about 2 to 3 minutes. And of course, we're happy to help you with talking points if you're able to provide some testimony. So just let Sarah know as soon as you can if you're able to attend, and she'll send you a link to participate, and we'll help you with some talking points. I'm going to pause, take a deep breath, and see if anyone has any questions. I see no virtual or actual hands. So I believe that our next up is a presentation. Bonnie, do you want to do the honors of introducing our guests?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for the report, Director Long. Yes, we have some guests representing Multnomah County to give us an update on the earthquake-ready Burnside Bridge. I see Steve Drahota and his colleagues.
Hi. Yes,
Terrific.
thank you. I'm Megan Neal. I'm with Multnomah County. I am the project manager for Earthquake Ready Burnside Bridge. With me today is Sharon DeLeo, our city liaison for the project. I just want to pass it over her to share some opening remarks before we get started. I believe we will come back to Sharon here shortly, and we'll just jump right into the presentation. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay, if you guys could just let me know when you've seen it, when you see it.
It's up.
Good.
Yeah.
We do see it, Megan. Thank you.
Okay, great. So we're here today to present a briefing on our project, just kind of share where we are. We're at a key milestone now. Just a reminder of where we've been over the last year. The project team published a draft environmental impact statement last February. In that environmental impact statement, we identified a preferred alternative called the long span alternative. I know that we've shared a little bit about that with you over the last year. Since we published that document, our county leadership has asked the project team to find ways to reduce the overall project cost, just simply with the rising costs due to COVID and the competing market for labor and materials that we anticipate over the coming years, they really thought the best way to get this project funded and built is to try to bring the costs down. So we spent the last year identifying ways to do that. We've come up with 3 primary recommendations, and we have we're here today to share the 3 recommendations that have been confirmed and approved by our Board of County Commissioners. They are now published in a supplemental draft EIS that's out in the community for public review. And so we wanted to walk through those 3 recommendations, share information about how to comment on the supplemental draft EIS should you so desire, as well as kind of run through the impacts and mitigations that are currently being discussed with park staff and other members at the city. So I know I have 30 minutes, so I'll try to go quickly. I know some of the information might be a repeat for everyone. So just to start off, why is the county doing this mega project? Really comes down to that there's a 1 in 3 chance that a major Cascadia subduction zone earthquake will hit our region in the next 50 years. So at the end of the day, it's really not a matter of if, but when. And so we feel we need to get prepared. As a county, we own 6 of the major Willamette River bridges downtown across the Willamette River. 3 of those bridges overall across the Willamette River are designated emergency transportation lifeline routes. 2 are owned by ODOT, the Fremont and the Markham Bridge, and then 1 is owned by the county, and that's the Burnside Bridge. As you can see, if you map on all the region's emergency transportation routes in the region and color code them based on their ability to withstand a major earthquake, you really see that downtown there isn't really a lot of seismic resiliency of our infrastructure. And the county truly feels that we need at least 1 bridge that is going to be immediately usable after the big one. So that's why we feel compelled really to bring the Burnside Bridge up to current seismic code. So we have the first downtown seismically resilient bridge for our community to use. ODOT right now is really focusing on other infrastructure projects, rightly so. There's a lot of need in our community. For example, the Abernathy Bridge seismic upgrade, as well as upgrading the interstate bridge. There's really no identified investment in the downtown lifeline routes in the immediate future. So that is why the county feels it's important to focus on the Burnside Bridge. We created the Earthquake Ready Burnside Bridge project. Its key purposes are really to provide that seismically resilient crossing downtown for emergency responders to get goods and people to where they need to go. And then in the coming years after the major earthquake, help our community rebuild and recover and get back to work and keep people living here in our region. Then independent of the earthquake, this bridge is 96 years old. It is showing its age, and it's still very expensive to maintain 100-year-old bridges. So we're looking to have another crossing in this location for the next 100 years for our community to use. Overall, we started this project back in 2016. We're looking to have a bridge open and ready to use by 2030. It's an aggressive schedule, although that sounds like a really long time. We are currently wrapping up the environmental review phase at line in green. We did extend the environmental review phase about a year to publish the supplemental DEIS to identify cost-saving measures. We're looking to wrap that up by the end of this year. By December, we hope to publish our record of decision. We are funded through the design phase, so we're looking to tilt up the design phase later this fall and work through the design for the next 2 to 3 years as we continue to pursue funding for construction. And should we be successful with our funding strategies, we hope to break ground as early as 2025. This is another way to kind of look at where we are in our environmental review process. We started out with a range of alternatives, evaluated them, defined the preferred alternative, published the draft environmental impact statement, refined it down to now the new recommended preferred alternative, published in now the draft supplemental EIS, out for public comment, and then wrapping up with the final EIS and record of decision in December. Just a reminder of the recommended preferred alternative, we call it the long span. It essentially replaces the existing Burnside Bridge with a new movable bridge in the exact same alignment, touching down at the exact same locations. There's just fewer supports underneath, that creating longer spans. That's why we call it the long span. One of the reasons why this alternative has really risen to the top is because it puts the bridge in the best position to be resilient in a major earthquake. If you look on the right hand of your screen, there's a orange brownish shading area. That's the east bank of the Willamette River, which we've identified to have a highly liquefiable soils. We tried to eliminate as much of the foundations in that vulnerable soil as possible, which is in orange there, just one row of supports on the east side, as much out of that liquefiable soil as possible, creating a very long span. So this is one of the key strategies that we are employing with this alternative in hopes that, well, to help assure that it will be immediately usable after a major earthquake. Last year, we were evaluating a number of structure types for the long span. A couple options on the screen are the tight arch on the top left, similar to the Savi's Island Bridge. Top right, cables supported, similar to the Tillicum structure. And in the bottom, just a conventional girder style structure, similar to what's out there today. And today, we're here really to say that we've made some decisions about this structure type as part of the refinements to the preferred alternative, as along with one decision about narrowing the entire bridge itself. So we'll be walking through the decision about going with the girder span type for the west side over Tom McCall Waterfront Park, keeping with the bascule movable span for the portion over the river, as similar to what's out there today, and then narrowing the bridge by one vehicular travel lane. Overall, this saves the project approximately $200 million, and we feel like it's the right decision for this project to keep it on track to being funded and built. So I'll walk through each of these recommendations in a little bit more detail. So over Tom McCall Waterfront Park, we landed on the conventional girder style for a couple of reasons. One, it's the cheapest. It saves approximately $20 to $40 million of the overall project costs. We are able to, with this option, achieve a higher vertical clearance than what's out there today to provide park users and vendors a little bit more open space and feeling when they're under the bridge. We have 2 supports in the park relative to the 4 that's there now, again, contributing to that open space under the bridge. We also heard very clearly from the National Park Service, which is the jurisdiction that presides over the historic districts here on the west side, that they could not permit a structure that had structure above the deck, simply because it's important that we preserve not only the views into the historic district, but the views out of the historic district. So the conventional girder style had the least impacts on the historic district. We also heard from the community that they really enjoy the open views of the city, especially of the Portland, Oregon sign, and that they wanted that to be preserved with a new bridge concept. Moving on to the lift span over the river, we considered the vertical lift option as well as the bascule, like what's out there today. On the screen are 2 modern versions of those lift types. I know here in Portland, we're very used to older bridges, so I just kind of wanted to share kind of what a new one could look like. At the end of the day, we chose the bascule style, again, very similar to the west side girder option. It preserves the open views above the deck of the city, of the historic district, of downtown that are out there today. This results in the least impacts, both visually and on the historical resource here in this area. It also saved the project costs of approximately $25 to $35 million, and again, has support from our community. I think there's a recognition that this bridge is located in the center of downtown, of the center of Portland, exactly on the axis of north, south, east, west. And so there's a desire to have the city be on display, not necessarily the bridge in this location. Finally, I wanted to explain our concept about reducing the bridge by 1 vehicular lane. Just a reminder of the existing cross section. It has 5 lanes today with 1 eastbound transit only lane. There's approximately 13 feet of bike ped space on either side. Just no protection with only channelization devices as protection between the cyclists and the vehicular users. In our draft environmental impact statement 1 year ago, we did recommend widening the bridge, maintaining those 5 lanes, but just giving a little bit of breathing room, bringing the lanes to 11 feet, as well as adding, expanding the bike ped space to 20 feet, which would be the widest bike ped space in downtown Portland on any bridge right now. However, given our cost constraints that we're facing, we did work closely with the city and do extensive traffic analysis from now into 2040 and found that we felt like it was worthy of considering removing 1 vehicular lane off the screen. So what we're now proposing, or off the bridge. So what now we're proposing, what's on the screen is 4 vehicular lanes. The option that's rising to the top is what you see on the screen, which is 2 lanes in each direction while preserving the eastbound transit only lane. We are now looking at a range of bike ped space from 14 to 17 feet. 14 would match the Tillicum Bridge, which is the widest bike ped space that's out there today. Again, this really is the biggest bang for your buck when you're looking to save costs. We feel like we can save approximately 140 to 165 million with this decision. What's nice about this option is that it allows for the implementation of a westbound transit only lane in the future, should that be needed from a traffic and congestion standpoint. We did go out to the community with these 3 recommendations back in the fall. On the screen, you can see we did a broad and diverse range of outreach to a variety of groups and use all of the tools in the toolbox to try to engage as many people as possible. And at the end of the day, our policy group, as well as the Board of County Commissioners, unanimously supported the 3 cost-saving measures. Now, through all this time, we have been working closely with park staff, park leadership to walk through potential impacts and mitigation. I'm going to zoom into this map here in the next few slides. I know it's a little bit hectic, but just wanted to acknowledge that we are going to be impacting the use of park space during the construction phase of this project. On the west side over Tom McCall Waterfront Park, there's really not a lot of space to actually construct the bridge. So we've tried to carve out in brown here some space to allow the contractor to mobilize, demolish the existing structure, and then reconstruct the new construction structure over Tom McCall Waterfront Park, largely putting the workspace to the north of the bridge so that we avoid impacts to the fountain area, as well as the fountain and shade structure to the south of the bridge. But it's a quite confined space, but we will know more once we have a contractor on board about how to best utilize this space here on the west side. On the east side, there is no access really from the east side. So we have tried to come up with ways to define an area that could potentially provide construction access for contractors so that we evaluate the impacts on NEPA. Again, not clear what the contractor will actually do to access the east side, but right now we've got in brown here some access kind of snaking from the east side across the railroad up and under I-5 and down to work bridges on the water there. But at the end of the day, we are impacting the East Bank Esplanade and working closely with park staff to try to minimize the length and the duration of those closures. So just to kind of wrap up kind of high level where we are with impacts and mitigations, within the park itself, we anticipate having to remove existing landscaping and trees and hardscaping. This also includes a portion of the Japanese American Historical Plaza. Again, a stakeholder we're working very closely with, along with park staff, about how to mitigate those impacts. Our plan is to return those facilities to their pre-construction state or better. And during construction, protect and maintain the street and park trees that are not being impacted where possible, and of course, replace any trees that were removed during the project. In regards to tenants and use of the park, we've been working closely with Saturday Market, Night Strike, Rose Festival, etc., to try to find alternatives where they can still hold their services and functions. And again, we're working closely with park staffs about how best to do that. Access to the parks is something we're very mindful of. We're working on developing detours for all users, pedestrians, cyclists, vehiculars. We're trying to be mindful of operation and maintenance need access to the parks staff. So we're working diligently to develop traffic control management plans, try to have temporary closures where during times that are kind of low use, such as nights and weekends, and coordinating with surrounding businesses, again, to try to minimize impacts and disruptions during construction. Noise, dust, and debris, we're also very mindful of, and looking at ways at things we should do beyond just what's expected on how to minimize air pollution, as well as dust, especially because there's a lot of residences in the west side there living in short stay housing who might be affected by noise and debris and whatnot. And the county does have a clean diesel contracting policy now where all construction machinery on site will need to have the most upgraded equipment to minimize air pollution if they are using diesel. So today you've heard a little bit about the two structure types that we are making a decision on now. We've talked through a bit of the impacts and mitigations that we are continuing to work through and coordinate on. I just wanted to briefly remind the group that we are still waiting to decide on what the east long span structure type will look like on into the design phase. We really feel like we want the contractor on board to advise us. It's going to be very difficult to construct over the freeways and I-5s. We're still looking at a tight arch structure on the left-hand side of the screen and a cable stay structure on the right-hand side of the screen. So in general, this is the renderings we have of the project today that we're, again, really eager to get funded and built. Should you want to comment on the supplemental draft EIS, the public comment period is open. We published on April 29th, and that public comment period closes June 13th. Again, it really focuses on those cost-saving measures that are resulting in refinements to the preferred recommended alternative, the long span, identifying the impacts and evaluating them, and identifying potential mitigation. There's a number of ways you can comment. Most people send an email to burnside-eis@molco.us, but we have an online open house where you can peruse all the materials. You can leave us a voicemail, you can send us a snail mail. We also have an in-person hearing if you'd like to share with your voice what you feel, how you feel about what we are proposing. After we wrap up the supplemental DIS, there's a couple next steps that we want to hit this year. We will be coming to City Council in July to request approval of the refined locally preferred alternative. And then again, as I mentioned before, wrap up the final EIS and publish a record decision in December. Then we'll just roll on into a final design phase from late this year to late 2024. And we look forward to identifying the structure type for the east approach and getting into the weeds about more design features such as the bike ped treatments, railings, lighting, etc. How does the bridge look and feel essentially as a user? And then getting that contractor on board so we can help better understand the impacts of our project on key facilities such as the Esplanade and the waterfront park. So I'm going to pause there and ask if Sharon is here to maybe provide a little bit of an update about where we are with the connection to the East Bank Esplanade.
Thank you, and good morning. Sorry I was a little late. I was having some technology challenges.
Sharon sounds very quiet. Can folks online
Is that
talk?
better? Is that
Yeah,
better?
that's better.
Okay. Sorry, technology. I always joke that it's not my friend, and it certainly is not being my friend this morning. So I'm Sharon Dalio, and I'm the PM with PBOT's Major Projects and Partnerships Group. PBOT is the lead bureau for the city on this project, and so I'm leading the coordination between the city bureaus. And as we support Multnomah County through these processes since they're the owner of the facility. And so I just wanted to let you guys know city staff is also reviewing the SDIS, and PBOT will be gathering all of the city comments to provide to the county. And then our council has also been briefed, and our next council meeting is on track for July. And at that time, we will be asking council to approve the SDIS. So as a group, if you all have a high level comment or concerns with the SDIS, we would ask that those be provided as a joint letter to the council. And then if you have, comments as an individual, you can certainly log those through the process that Megan outlined. And then any questions or clarifications that you need addressed, myself and the team are all available. So just wanted to kind of note those things. And then with regard to the East Bank Esplanade, the city has hired a consultant to develop concepts that will provide a ramp connection from both the north and south side of the bridge to the Esplanade. And then the goal with the concepts that are being developed would be to reduce some redundancy and also reduce impacts to the extent possible. The consultant is going to provide preliminary estimates for each of these concepts, as well as the human access project concept that provides only access to the south side of the bridge. We expect to see the first drafts of those concepts at the end of May, and then hopefully have a preferred alternative by midsummer. And I think that is all I was going to say on that topic, and I'll turn it back over to Megan.
Great, thank you, Sharon. Well, that pretty much wraps up our briefing today. Thank you for your attention and time. I'll go ahead and bring down the PowerPoint, and then I can see everyone again, and then Sharon and I can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Sharon, for the update. Any comments from the board, particularly folks on the Land Use and Infrastructure Working Group? I know have been a little bit tracking this a little bit more closely. I do see hands, Allie, and then Corbin.
Yeah, just two quick questions. One, I heard at first it was a really great presentation, and I'm so appreciative. So thank you for all the work that went into that. And just two questions. One, I heard you mention a variety of different kinds of pollution. I'm wondering how you guys are factoring in light pollution to reduce sky glow in the city. And then also wondering, in late last year, a Portland auditor found that the city is woefully unprepared to assist people with disabilities during emergencies. Thinking of this as one of the major arteries available, I'm wondering about wheelchair accessibility and the grade of the bridge. And thank you.
Yeah, I can answer the ADA question, and then maybe I can have Steve Drohoda answer the lighting design question. Okay, so our bridge will be designed to be ADA compatible. That includes the grades and the connections at the ends of the bridge, as well as the bike ped space it will be ADA compliant. We're also doing some upgrades to the sidewalks in the street network adjacent to the bridge landing points in order to provide ADA accessible connections from the bridge down to the light rail line. Now that light rail line may not be in play after the earthquake, but the bridge itself will be ADA compliant. So next I'll ask Steve address the lighting design question.
Sure. And before I do that, and so the maximum grade on the bridge is about 4.5%, not a whole lot different than it is today on the west side, and then it becomes much flatter on the east side. So we're really trying to preserve the grades as they are today. With respect to lighting, we haven't done a lot in terms of the lighting analysis. That's one of those things that's being pushed into the final design. The NEPA team is very aware of the ordinances that exist and other desires that combine light, so-called bridge lighting aesthetics with the ordinances and trying to minimize the exposure of, well, frankly, light pollution like you're describing. But that is something that's being reserved to the final design phase. So we've set that up to be tackled starting at the end of the year, just like Megan had mentioned, but we don't have answers to that at this particular time.
Okay, thank you both very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Go ahead, Corbin.
Thank you. I second that. Great presentation. I guess my question is around, just for I have two questions, but the clarification, the bridge at this point is the strongest bridge regarding any sort of situation with earthquakes. Is that correct?
So not right now. The landscape of bridges in terms of seismic resiliency is like this. So the Selwood Bridge has been designed to current seismic standard code. However, it's not really centrally located, and it is only, it's pretty narrow, not many lanes wide. Next, we have the Tillicum structure. The bridge itself over the water is designed to be seismically resilient, but not the approaches. And there are also structures that would collapse on top of the roadways that would bring you up to their bridge. So in terms of being immediately usable after the earthquake, the Tillicum is not fully there. And that bridge is really a transit focused bridge overseen by FTA rather than FHWA. So I think they're able to have a little bit of allowed to have a little bit different approach when it comes to the seismic design code. But again, that bridge is very narrow. It's not centrally located, be challenging to get to after an earthquake. Now downtown, none of the bridges, I think there's 9 bridges that cross the bridge downtown. None of them are expected to be immediately usable. So this would be the first bridge downtown that would be up to seismic code and be immediately usable after an earthquake.
So thank you for that, because when you introduced the map, it seemed like the Burnside Bridge is like better than the rest, but you're going to make it stronger.
Correct.
Okay.
What I'd like to add is that the Burnside Bridge is in a good position to be selected to be upgraded because there aren't any structures over top of it that would collapse on top of it after an earthquake. If you think about the Morrison Bridge, there's a lot of ramp structures that could collapse on it, blocking passage, so it's not immediately usable. Also, the Burnside Bridge is fairly wide and connects 19 miles from Washington County to Gresham with very few seismically vulnerable structures or overpasses along it. So in terms of investing in bolstering a lifeline route, that's another reason why we feel like it makes sense to invest it here because of the resiliency of the entire corridor.
Okay, and this will be my follow-up question. What's the contingency plan when this bridge is under construction? What does it mean for the rest of the city if there is seismic activity?
So it's probably no different than what it is today, right now, should the earthquake happen. There would still be no bridge downtown immediately usable after an earthquake.
So is there a plan in place to help folks across the bridge or coordination when this is being built, because of seismic activity can happen at any time and we never know. There's not a season for it.
Mhm. Let's see, our project itself isn't implementing a emergency response plan. Should an earthquake happen while we are building the bridge, I would probably defer to the regional emergency management coordination teams for what the plan would be at that time.
Thank you.
Bonnie, Patty had a question in our room.
Thank you very much. My question is about the Japanese American Historic Plaza. It would be a great shame if, I think, as a result of staging operations, there was permanent damage to that. And so I wonder whether it's possible to place some conditions on how the contractor leaves it when they finish with it. I'm thinking particularly of the maturity of the cherry trees along the walkway next to the river. It would be a poor thing if we end up with two little buggy whips at the end of the row rather than maintaining that splendid avenue that's there today. So I wonder if there can be a condition that either those trees are protected during construction or they are removed and replaced after construction in order to maintain the integrity of the design.
We have given a lot of thought, and I might ask Steve to provide a little bit more detail of our approach in that location moving forward.
Thank you.
Sure. So Patty, yeah, we are equally concerned about the condition of those cherry trees. And so what we've done is within the space allocated or expected to be the entryway into the river for construction, we've set up a protective zone outside of roughly 10 feet or more, so that there's fencing the contractor can't get into it. So the hardscape that extends around, that's the Japanese American Historical Plaza area, and the cherry trees are going to be fenced off or cordoned off from any contractor involvement. But we're contemplating actually putting another fence line up so they can be even more protected from the general public, so there isn't a little cove that people can sit in. So that's the current plan. During construction, one of the benefits of the delivery method, the construction manager, general contractor method, is the contractor will be working with the design team as part of the design process. And so as the conditions around construction access are being developed, it's going to be set as a provision to protect and be offset from those trees and, frankly, that hardscape path. The grassy area that's to the west of the pathway is expected to be used, and that would be fully replaced back to existing condition, frankly, or better, maybe back to existing condition when it was originally placed. And that will be in concert with parks and Japanese American Historical Organization and others. So it's been taken pretty seriously, but at this point, we can't go a lot further until the contractor is there and setting up the method by which those trees are protected.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. I see Adrian's hand is up.
Yeah, so I was interested in what's the evidence to support the reduction of a lane? I understand it's cheaper, but especially since it's kind of in the event of an earthquake, it's going to be our single crossing in the event of a serious earthquake. And then also, you know, the impact of increased traffic to the quality of the parks on both sides and quality of life issues. So how is that played out?
So I can just speak to the trade-off for in the decision the county has made to suggest to reduce one vehicle lane, and then I'll ask Steve to speak to the traffic analysis we did. So the county would love to have a 5-lane bridge. We just feel that it would be infeasible to identify the funding for a 5-lane bridge. And what we hear most from the community is, can you please build this faster? We feel like it's better to have a seismically resilient 4-lane bridge rather than no bridge at all. So we agree that having 5 lanes would be better immediately after an earthquake. It increases capacity. Capacity will be needed, but at the risk of not having this bridge happen, we feel like we're okay with removing 1 lane. So then I'll ask Steve to talk about the analysis as we did about a 4-lane bridge.
Yeah. Well, frankly, I'll say this, the traffic analysis was a little bit surprising to us as we found it out. So again, at the very beginning of the project, there was an assumption it would be replaced with 5 lanes going in. But when we did the traffic analysis, we found through policies that the city is implementing, that Metro's implementing with more transit and other, I guess, changes to the way the traffic is expected to go forward with, even though the overall number of traffic trips are increasing regionally, the numbers on the local bridges, the Multnomah County bridges, stayed flat between now and the anticipated traffic analysis horizon in 2045. And so what it shows is you have the same number of cars, same number of vehicles on it. And so it's better practice to actually increase transit ability on the bridge, which is why the cross section, this 4-lane cross section, has on it a dedicated eastbound transit lane and the ability to have a dedicated westbound transit lane. And so increasing transit is offsetting the amount of traffic that is anticipated to be on the bridge. And so we did the analysis. We found that even with the 4 lanes versus the 5, 96% of the traffic is served without any form of additional congestion, which was, again, surprising to us until we did that, but it's a byproduct of all the policies that are being implemented within the city itself. So we don't think there's any detrimental effects to reducing the number of traffic lanes from a traffic perspective problem. I think Megan said it right. When the big earthquake happens, having more space is always more convenient, better. It's one of the reasons why bike ped space is also being increased, because we know immediately after the earthquake that bike ped space is going to be the principal method by which people travel across from the east side to the west side, just because of the amount of damage that's expected citywide and the inability for mobility to occur. So we don't expect it to have significant impacts. And this was borne out through the bridge maintenance project that happened a few years ago, where it was reduced down to 3 lanes for about 2.5 years. And most people, frankly, don't remember that even happened. There wasn't Carmageddon. It sort of showed that people would shift their commute preferences a little bit without any meaningful effects. So again, it came as a bit of a surprise to us because we were fully expecting to need the same number of lanes, but it turns out through the traffic analysis that need didn't really show up.
Mike Elliott has a question.
Yeah,
Hi,
first
Mike.
off, thanks for the presentations. Those were very helpful. I actually have 2 brief questions. One is, I'm wondering what the clearance is under the west side of the bridge as opposed to what it is now. And second, I was wondering, when you were looking at changing to 3 lanes, if there was ever any consideration to having the center lane change directions depending on the time of day?
Great. So I think I'll ask Steve to address the vertical clearance, and maybe Sharon, if you want to speak to the consideration around the reversible lane, probably be helpful.
Okay, so with respect to vertical clearance, in that graphic that Megan showed during the presentation, you could see that there was a haunching effect. So basically that means that the depth of the structure changed. It got a little thicker as you approach the supports. Because of modern construction and that haunching approach, you actually have about a foot more vertical clearance, generally speaking, throughout the extent of Waterfront Park, with fewer columns within Waterfront Park. And that was the reason why Megan said that you actually have more horizontal and vertical clearance than exists today. There's one little piece over the path right adjacent to the river where it's about the same as out there today, even though the bridge section gets a little thicker. So the bottom line is you have at least a foot, generally speaking, throughout the park of additional vertical clearance. And those concepts that were being shown are simply concepts. The final design is certainly going to be looking at something that has more of an aesthetic appeal to it, understanding that it still has to conform and work with the historic downtown district. And so that's where a lot of exciting work, frankly, is going to happen during the final design phase on how do you actually mold these to achieve that additional vertical clearance while also having more of an aesthetically pleasing solution at the end. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Sharon. We did look at a reversible lane. That was one of the options that the analysis picked up. And then with the city as the roadway authority, we handed it to the city and said, what do you think about the different options? And with that, I'll hand it to Sharon to talk about.
Thanks. And so, yeah, we did look at the reversible option, and a couple of things related to it. There were some safety concerns. There's not a reversible lane anywhere in the state, and so that was a kind of a concern going into it. But then looking at the traffic analysis with the 3 vehicular lanes, so 2 lanes in each direction, 1 eastbound being the bus only lane, since the impacts to the city grid were found to be so minimal, we really preferred to proceed with the scenario that you saw today. And it's something that we would continue to monitor once it's implemented. And the reversible lane scenario is something we can kind of keep on the table to revisit if need be. The other thing with reversible setup is that requires additional infrastructure to be placed. And so we certainly wanted to, given the traffic analysis results, we wanted to try the 3 vehicular lanes as a starting point.
Thank you. I think we have no more questions unless there are burning questions. We do need to move on with our agenda. So thank you, Megan, Steve, Sharon, for the presentation and the update. I know our Land Use and Infrastructure Working Group is going to continue monitoring this. At this time, there's no proposal for the board to take a position, but I imagine the working group will consider that and discuss it at their next meeting. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we're going to move on to the community engagement revised meeting schedule proposal and enhanced community outreach. Erin.
Thank you. Okay, let's all just take a breath, take a minute. That's always kind of a scary and depressing topic. And a good reminder to do what you can as an individual to be at least individually prepared. So, okay, so with that, yes. So hopefully everybody got the actual proposal itself in advance. I'm going to talk a little bit about the proposal, what the proposal is, just some background around how we put it together, what the next steps are, and then just give plenty of opportunity for people to add their own comments to it or suggestions or whatnot. So, and then, we'll see if we can get to a vote at the end. The proposal itself is pretty simple. There's 2 parts to the proposal. The first is changing the meeting time. So right now our meetings are 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. To change that to 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. And the second part is to change the locations of the board meetings according to the following schedule. So our proposal has that we would meet in person between the months of May and September. And that we would rotate the locations to different community centers and also community-based organizations. And then between the months of October and April, we would hold our meetings virtually on Zoom like we've been doing in the past. Our group has been working, so Community Engagement Working Group has been working on a different kind of steps to really increase accessibility to the board meetings and to the process for public comment. And so we'll continue work in that, including trying to increase our board visibility, et cetera. But we came to the conclusion as a group that one thing that would really help is changing the meeting times. Right now, we're kind of right in the middle of the workday for a lot of individuals, and having our meetings only virtually and not out in the community is, I think, a barrier as well. So that's kind of the goal behind this. A little bit about our process. So we started with, I don't know how many of you remember, it was several months ago, where at the full board, individuals from the board itself and from staff gave their feedback around the idea of changing meeting times. The community engagement working group took that feedback and worked as a group over several different meetings to come up with this proposal, which we all have, we came to consensus on. And so some of the reasoning, so the meeting times from 5 to 7 p.m. A lot of community centers, like the recreation centers, close at 7:30 p.m. That's kind of a common time for the main recreation centers to close. So we don't, originally we had talked about some later meeting times, but we don't want to be in a situation where community centers, we're still kind of in there while the community center is technically closed. So that's where the meeting time 5 to 7 p.m. came in. And then we also want people to have an ability to speak, with our new public comment procedure, people can speak at the beginning or the end of the meeting. And so that gives kind of a good time frame for that. And so that's a little bit about the background. And so the other things that we're considering that we haven't formalized yet is the idea to have more kind of barrier removals, like offering on-site childcare. If we're meeting at community-based organizations, making sure that we can pay a rental fee to those organizations, and other things like that, reimbursement for transportation, things like that. So that's still kind of in the process. So would be actually identifying where we would be meeting and coordinating that. We haven't done that work yet. We've just been talking about it and creating lists and whatnot. So let's see. So before we open up for conversation, does anybody from the community engagement working group have did I leave anything out, or is there anything that you want to add? I will just add that, of course, we understand that for some individual board members, this time might be very convenient. For me personally, it's a convenient time, but we recognize that one of our imperatives is to, be an accessible forum for the community, and to do that, this is not generally a good time. So that's what I just want to make sure that we add that caveat, that we understand for some individuals it's not the best time, but we're looking more broad at making this group much more accessible to the community and increasing that use of public comment and board visibility. So you have to kind of imagine the future where we are actually, kind of fulfilling that role as a forum. So I want to just, we have time in the agenda to really have conversation or to get people's comments or thoughts about that. And I want to make sure people feel comfortable, providing that. So I'm just going to give some space now for conversation.
Thank you, Erin. I see Alana's hand up.
Great.
Yeah, a technical question actually before we get into conversation. I apologize, Erin. The timing, having meetings that are in person around the community in the summer months and then remote only in the winter months, was that a COVID outdoor options type of situation, or a community centers are open later in the summer? I was expecting you to say, or I guess when I was looking through it, I was expecting to read that in the winter months we might be at City Hall with a hybrid option. So I was surprised to see it remote only for those, and I'm wondering what the rationale was there.
Yeah, thank you. And I meant to kind of talk about that a little bit, so I'm glad that you brought that up. The idea between the summer months is not so much having it outdoors, it's more having the meetings end when it's still light outside. So when people attend the meeting and they're getting out of the meeting, it's not like, dark outside. And so just to have that. And then also, the idea that community centers are going to be more kind of those central meeting places for community during the summer months where there's people going to be outside, et cetera. So that's the idea behind that. It's not so much COVID, like the idea of having it outdoors. It's more the idea of the who's going to be at the community centers, and that, it won't be have been, in winter when it gets dark at 4 p.m. or whatever, that we're not going to be getting out like that. Now, in terms of actually meeting virtually versus having a hybrid type meeting, that's something we could certainly continue to have a conversation about as a board. I think when we came up with this proposal, this is of course our first hybrid meeting, so we weren't having any hybrid meetings at the time. I think the idea was that some of the things that we've learned is that we can hold things virtually. We don't always have to do things in person, and having that be the option during the winter months when it is cold and dark and people maybe don't want to go down to City Hall at night might be a good option. Although we could talk about if people would prefer to do a hybrid option. I don't know.
So jumping in real quick, due to state law, we are actually required to have hybrid meetings effective May 1st. So that will be offered.
Oh, yeah, yes. Thank you for adding that. There will always be some kind of option for access besides just in-person access to the meetings.
And then the only other thing I would note is that, and I apologize, I don't remember, you just said the timing, but currently at certain community centers, so because of this hybrid requirement, we have to have at a minimum, the capability to have conference calling available, which does meet the minimum requirement of the law, but I've been told by our experts here that, certainly within the spirit and intent of having that interaction, we would like to be video capable. And so some community centers don't quite have the AV setup and capability yet for us to provide that option. So that's just something I wanted to flag as we're talking about where we'd be moving to make sure that we actually we can meet our state and city law to provide a hybrid option. And ideally we can provide that virtual video option for folks.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something that we, when we get to the work of actually identifying the spaces where we would be meeting, would be obviously a main consideration.
I had a quick question, and it's regarding the retreat, which is usually held in June. So is the proposal here to have the retreat at a community center? It's usually in June.
Yeah, I mean, so since this hasn't gone to the full board yet, we haven't discussed actually the implementation. So the next steps would be is if the board does move forward with this proposal as is, to talk about the actual, when do we start? How do we identify the community centers? I can't imagine, honestly, I'm sure Bonnie has thoughts on this. I'm not sure that by June, I'm assuming since we have these dates in early June already set, that there's a location for those already, but I don't know.
I was thinking next year.
Yeah. Next year?
Yeah, next year.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know, Casey, what we're gonna do in a year.
Yeah, so to clarify,
figure it out.
Yeah, to clarify, Saren has set up a room either in City Hall or the Portland Building, I'm not sure which, for this retreat. As you know, and then so we're working with those present logistics for for the June retreat.
Yeah, and for next year, my first retreat, I know a lot of the board members here weren't on the board at the time, but my first retreat was at the Leach Botanical Garden, which was really nice. So, there's probably future options for something like that as well.
Yeah. Thank you. I see Corbin's hand is up.
There we go. When we conceived of this option, we weren't thinking about the retreat. We were thinking about our monthly meetings and making sure we're accessible as possible to the public. And so I would take the retreat off the table in regards to the conversation regarding our monthly meetings.
Mike Elliott has a question.
Yeah, just one quick question. And first, thanks, Aaron, everybody on the Community Engagement Working Group for all the work you put into this. If my memory is correct, I think when this topic first came up, we talked about, in addition to rotating the locations to increase accessibility, also possibly rotating the times, having some in the morning and some in the evening. I'm wondering if that was discussed and if thought was put to that, if you ruled that out for some specific reason.
Yeah, it was, we did discuss it, but we came to the conclusion that keeping the meeting time consistent would be best for accessibility for the community. And for not creating, confusion about when the meeting is going to be, so.
Thank you. And I just wanted to clarify too, so that folks know, our retreat is also considered a regular open, it's subject to regular open meetings laws, in as much as we're speaking about board business. So I believe that's the case. I believe that applies to the entire retreat, unless somebody on staff knows something I'm not aware of, but it is also subject to the same open meetings laws. Corbin.
Yeah, but it's not subject to the same amount of meeting time, right? And so and when we're talking about scheduling regular meeting times versus a retreat, which are, what's it, 6 hours or something like that? It's a different meeting, but under the same understanding that we want to keep it as accessible as possible.
Yeah, no argument. It's a different type of thing. I just wanted to mention that it's subject to the same open meetings regulations. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying. Thank you, Aaron. Anything else from the floor or from the rest of the working group? At this point, are you asking the board for support of this general proposal so that the Community Engagement Working Group can continue this direction, Aaron?
Yeah, my thinking is that we could take a vote on this. I'm happy to have more discussion, and if people have more thoughts or want to, alter this in any way. I haven't heard anything so far. I've just heard questions, but I want to make sure that there's space for that. And then if we vote, my thinking would be the next steps is this goes back to Community Engagement Working Group to start to work on actual implementation. Ideally, I think it would be great if by July we could have a space located, but we'd want to, of course, coordinate with our group and park staff around, what that could be and the, making sure we're meeting the requirements of the Oregon law, public meetings law, et cetera. But that's my thought there. So if there's, happy to entertain further discussion or call for a vote on the proposal.
Thank you, Aaron. Yeah, so it sounds like Aaron is open for any other questions. Otherwise, I will entertain a motion from the floor to support this proposal.
So move.
Thank you, Patty. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you, Alejandro. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call for the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? I see no opposition. Motion carries. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you all.
Okay, with that, we will move into the working group reports. We'll start.
Sorry, before we move into, I want to add something. Whereas we did vote on open forum at last month's meeting, can that be reflected within the agenda? So open forum 15 minutes at the beginning of meeting and 15 minutes at the end of the meeting. That way we have that dedicated open comment. That way we have that dedicated time already baked into our agenda minutes.
I think that sounds like a great idea. I don't think do we need to vote on that?
Already did.
Where's my parliamentarian? But
You
do we
already
need
did.
to?
I think technically that's already been done.
Yeah.
It just needs to
so
be
we-
reflected in the
Yes,
agenda.
it just
So we'll
needs to, yeah, we can operationalize that.
Yep, okay, terrific. Okay. Anything else on that before we move into the working group reports? Okay. If not, we'll go to the Board Affairs Working Group. Casey.
Thank you. I'll be very quick. Actually, first, just a personal thank you to Saren and Michelle for putting the volunteer opportunities at the end of the agenda. I really appreciate that. Thank you. So a couple of just updates. If you've already read the written report, the board mission, we're hoping for a major progress on this after the June retreat, after the presentation of Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland. On the board matrix, we have a new one. I appreciate everybody answering their survey questions and getting back to us. I want to thank Aaron and Saren for all their work in getting this done. It's really appreciated. Looks very nice. Onboarding new members. I want to thank Michelle for developing a new centralized location for all the information for the board, which is great. And I hope everyone's had the opportunity to make sure that they can access the folders. And then lastly, probably what we're going to discuss at the next meeting, and we discussed the last meeting, is trying to bring clarity on how issues are being reviewed at working groups and then brought to the board's attention in an effort to increase transparency and participation. The discussion may also cover the process for board members to publicly comment on programs and policies. If anyone has any comments or ideas on these issues, I would appreciate you contacting me. And I don't know if any other members of the group have anything else they want to comment on. And then any questions from anyone? Thank you all.
Thank you, Casey. Any questions from the floor or any supplements from other members of the Board Affairs Working Group? Hearing none, we'll move on to the Land Use and Infrastructure Working Group. Is that Patty? Are you giving that report or is that David?
David's going to do that.
Terrific.
I'm gonna do that. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, thanks. Yeah, we had a great meeting last Tuesday and got updated on a number of different topics. And so I'll kind of touch on them briefly. The first topic was the off-road cycling report. It was a great update by Maya. And because this started so long ago, this started actually in 2015, which may predate a number of the folks on this board. We thought it might be great to maybe have a update to the full board when that final draft is written on the report. So we're hoping to maybe bring that back to the full board so that we can all be onboarded and figure out if we want to finalize and support it by the board. So that is to be determined when that can happen. But again, it's a report, it's not a plan, and we hope to bring that back to the full board soon. The second topic was the Albina Vision. Lauren gave us a great update on that, and there were some wonderful work sessions that happened that were really listening sessions for the community. For that one, the biggest component for that one is the Blanchard PPS site, and PPS is still trying to figure out whether they're ready to relocate and rebuild, or if that will be a site that's a part of this vision. But that Blanchard site really is the key in this development process. There is a meeting, I believe, the City Council on May 17th from 9:30 to 11:30, and so that if you want to listen in on that, you can do that. If not, it's going to be recorded. Well, that will be presented to the City Council. Is that right? Yeah. The next topic was Cathedral Park. There's DEQ testing happening there, and I think the results are in and they're just being processed. So we're going to wait and hear the report on that one. I believe there's some additional community meetings on May 16th, 17th, and 18th for that. But again, we're just waiting for the final report from that testing for Cathedral Park. We got an update from Brett on the Olmsted 200 and Randy as well. There's been a number of really great events around the city kind of celebrating that 200th anniversary of the park plan. So that's been great to see that activity happening for that. Next topic was the Metro Bond local share list, and that was reviewed and approved by council already. Let's see. The next topic was Rose City Playground. Randy gave a great update on that one, so I don't want to steal his thunder. But it looks like the fundraising is completed and they're treating this as kind of a pilot program. And so they're really looking forward to looking to see what the next playground or next update for that could be. And then we had a brief update again from Randy on the Thompson Fountain and Elk statue, and he'll probably report on that as well. But the foundation is creating a project advisory committee, and all those folks can be found on the foundation's website along with the RFQ for that. And so the foundation is approaching this in a very methodical way with a very professional and responsible group of experts and community members. The board can maintain engagement right now as an interested observer and wait for the study to be complete. When that study is complete, maybe we can review the restoration study's finding, and at that point we can discuss whether or not we take a position as a board with a letter. But I think we've been really grateful of the work the foundation is doing on that, and we can stand by and see how the study unfolds. But I think that was, and Randy's probably going to talk about that a little bit more. For the unbuilt community park improvements, what they're calling the Feral Cat Cove Skateboard Park, Lauren let us know that the city civil engineer is reporting on all those and analyzing the structural and safety conditions of those. And so we'll keep abreast of those. Let's see. Trying to think, there's a number of other items that we're tracking. Patty, anyone else on the committee with other or on that working group that have other items we should bring to the table to report on?
David?
Yes.
This is Lauren. Just a point of clarification. The Metro approval will be on the 18th by council.
For the local share?
Sorry?
For the local share list?
Metro local share. Right.
Yeah.
It's going to council on the 18th.
On the 18th. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, David. Any comments from others on that working group or any questions from the floor? If not, thank you for your report, David.
Thanks. I did want to ask one question. Did we need to do that formality of anything about Patty shifting off of the chair of that committee or anything like that? Or how do we want to tackle that today? Or do we want to?
Other than applauding Patty, chairs of groups are done by the chair of the board.
Yeah, so
it's not an elected position.
yeah, and that will probably happen at the retreat when we thank Patty for her service.
Perfect.
So, thank you. If there's nothing else on land use and infrastructure, we will move to the financial sustainability working group. Mike.
Sure, thanks. So I think I might have misunderstood an earlier email and thought this was going to be Q&A only. So most of what I would discuss was in my written report. So I do have one update to that though, is from the time I wrote it, the mayor's budget has come out. I haven't had a chance to debrief with Claudio yet, but I did spend a couple of minutes looking at the almost 400-page document yesterday. I just say a couple of the things that I think I found, and if anybody on staff hears me say something incorrect, please feel free to correct me. Is the mayor's proposed budget does include 9 packages that are funded with the levy, which I think is all of them that we expected. It also includes the $1 million in the general fund capital set aside for HVAC upgrades at Peninsula Park, and then what we didn't know for sure was going to happen is the use of the ARPA funds. And it's, from what I can see, it looks like there's $9.2 million that are going to go towards repairing the Mount Scott Community Center and redeveloping O'Brien Square. And then I think $1.75 million to expand the Parks Rangers program. So I think that's pretty much in line with what I was able to dig up. I'm getting nods, so that's good.
One thing I'll just add on the park ranger program, about $750,000 is the staffing, and about $1 million is for physical infrastructure improvements, whether it's fencing or other security protocols for our facilities.
Great. And just out of curiosity, is that 750 is for 1 year?
That is just for 1 year, and then we're gonna have a conversation of the appropriate follow-on funding.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Hey, Todd?
Yeah.
The email that Bob Delacy sent to us
Yeah,
was not that, so I think we need to correct that. Step by
for the 1.75.
for the O'Brien Square and Mount Scott.
Okay.
Could you share that with me too? When you know.
No, I think that, yeah, I think you are right.
Okay.
I think there was a little bit of confusion.
Perfect. So I don't know if anybody else in the group has anything they want to add from our meeting. Everything's in the written report that I sent out. Or are there any questions on the report? Yeah.
I don't have a question on the
Casey
report.
has his hand up.
No question on the report, but on the budget, did they keep the allocation of the set aside or?
Set aside is staying in for parks, so we're getting that back. Thank you for your testimony.
Good, yeah, it was all my doing.
There is a budget note in the mayor's proposed about, we've given presentations to levy oversight committee and in the finance committee about how we were proposing to allocate the general fund expenditures first and levy second. And so there is a budget note in there for the city's controller, the city budget office and parks to work together. And we expect to have an amendment and to bring clarity in the practice to that by the June adopted budget. And so there's a note in the mayor's proposed that we're supposed to work on that. And hopefully we'll get back to you later this month about where that's trending in our subcommittee meeting. But we're working hard to make sure the intent of voters is that general fund dollars will be backed out and replaced with levy. We're trying to make sure we've got the accounting practices in the city lined up to make sure we execute on that.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you, Mike. Any other questions or any additions from others on the financial sustainability work group? Hearing none, we'll get a brief report on the NOMCOM from Erin.
Yes, so now we will be, the process is going along, so applications are closed. I'm sure we'll be getting them soon, and we'll keep you all updated. I don't have a big update right now, except for we're going to be starting our work of reviewing them and making our recommendation, I guess, in June, right? At the retreat? That seems wrong. Our timeline a little off.
Yeah, usually the timing is that we would have the candidates that we would recommend. Yeah, the timing is off.
Right? Yeah,
we would have had them today, so we could vote on them.
Yeah, the timing must have gotten a little off. That's okay. We extended the application a week because we didn't get very many applications, and Ilana sent that email to everybody. Hopefully we've got in a few more. We'll learn soon. And so I think then we're gonna have to wait to June. I think we're gonna have to have we're filling 2 positions, but so I think we're gonna have to in June look at those as the full board at our retreat, I guess, as a small agenda item.
Yeah, because Saren, do we have time on city council for this topic?
Yes, we do. They will be voted on at city council on the 15th, June 15th.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we get applications in on Wednesday, and I will send those out to everyone. And then the review will happen to discuss who's moving forward for an interview on Friday. And then we have time set aside on the May 27th for the interviews. Between now and then, we'll have a very quick at the commissioner briefing on the 19th, just to let Commissioner Rubio know who we're proposing for interviews. And then June 2nd, after the interviews, we'll let the commissioner know who we're proposing to be on the board. And then, as he said, on the third or fourth at the retreat, we can have a vote to officially bring those folks on board. And then on the 15th will be the council session where those folks will officially be voted on.
Okay, thank you. And to clarify, Stephen Herrera, Commissioner Rubio's policy advisor, is going to be participating in the review and interview process. I see Stephen is here.
Well,
yeah, and this is a little bit.
Quick clarification there. So Stephen is going to be taking a well-deserved vacation. So unfortunately that conflicted with the interviews, but definitely will be weighing in on reviewing applications and providing us with some feedback on this.
Okay, terrific. Yeah, let's consider this for future years, because in the past, we've actually brought our nominees to the full board in the May meeting. And then we've had them approved. Actually, they weren't approved by City Council, but we did have them approved by the board for advancement so that we could invite them to the retreat. It was typically the first meeting of those new board members. So we will heed that schedule going forward. Okay, anything else on the NOMCOM? Hearing none. Thank you, Aaron, for the report. We'll move on to the foundation report. Randy.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. How are we doing on time, Bonnie?
We're actually great. We're actually ahead of schedule by about 12 minutes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure, because I'm sure there'll be some discussion about a couple of items. So let me get this up here. David did kind of steal a little of my thunder, but that's okay. So we, whoops, I got the right deck up here. I don't. Sorry, let me try this again.
Sorry, Randy.
Let me get the right. Okay, I guess it is. Okay. Let me get to the right. Well, something's wrong here, but anyway, so we did complete fundraising for Rose City Playground during the month of April. So PPR will be proceeding with design and installation of that. The campaign went extremely well. We had a very generous gift from the Walker Foundation that got us started. But we raised about $30,000 in a month. So it was a great campaign, and we think it'll serve as a template going forward. So there's that. We're super happy about that. It's been kind of a long time being created. Experiment number one complete. And we're reviewing other playgrounds and possibly might try to do a twofer going forward, but we'll see. Be able to report back to you in a couple months on that, I hope. We have our Friends and Allies Summit coming up on Thursday. If you have not registered, I'll put the registration in the chat. It's going to be a great program. We have Gabe, I'm already blanking out of how to pronounce his name. Anybody can help me here. Gabe Schauschips, I think is how it's pronounced, Executive Director of Trying Creek, and very dynamic guy. And Adina is going to be speaking, and we will be announcing our 2 annual US Bank Parks Champions, and we will announce our first Joey Pope Award for Parks Leadership. Former Parks Director and very close friend of Joey Pope's, Zeri Santner, will be giving that out. 2 of our board members, very fun duo, J.R. Lilly and Silas Sanderson, will be emceeing, and we're going to have tacos, and music by Friends of Noise. And then I'll give you a sneak preview. We're also going to be unveiling our next 4 parks posters for Tabor and for Cully and for Lewitt View and for Cathedral. So we'll have the silkscreen versions of those at the summit, which are absolutely gorgeous. On the Joey Pope Parks Leadership Fund, that got started with $150,000 seed from Joey Pope, which will be matched up to $250,000. So far, we have, in the very quiet phase of this, assembled 22 donors who have given us over 100,000 so far. So we feel like that's going very well, and it's wonderful to be giving out the first award. Very exciting. We are also working heartily on Paseo, which will be July 15th through the 17th, which I think I've already told you. We have a wonderful group of artists that we're now trying to match our ambitions to budget, but also there's going to be lots of other things, yoga and meditation and health activities, and a whole Szymanski is going to be completely given over to indigenous folks with dancers and drummers and storytelling. And then we've got some great collaborations with a number of groups on other programming. So mark that on your calendars, and we're almost to our goal on fundraising. And so if you know of any businesses who might be interested in this, this is really the largest entirely BIPOC driven downtown festival that's ever been done. This is our steering committee, a wonderful group of folks that we've been working with, musicians, the former creative laureate, Jessica Lagunas from Latino Network, been involved in doing the wonderful murals going up in the exhibition Mexican Modernism at the museum right now. Daryl Ramsey, who some of you might know from Outdoor Afro, and Chitogo from Forest Park Conservancy. So it's been a great group to work with. Lots of you, expressed lots of interest. Everybody's expressing lots of interest in the Elk Fountain. Big development. Commissioners Carmen Rubio and Dan Ryan have put forward a resolution that is at council tomorrow that will direct the bureaus to take, all the bureaus involved, to take the necessary steps to restore and return the fountain to its original condition and location. And then also OMF is being directed to withdraw its application for the historic demolition delay. So if the little bit of process question, if this passes and the demo delay is withdrawn, then any restoration of the fountain will likely go through a Type 3 Historic Landmarks Commission review, which is appealable to City Council. So we're on a very different process track than we were before. Our work, which we talked about a little bit about last time, has kind of moved from a kind of suggestion to now an accelerator, because we were going to proceed with commissioning a feasibility study for the full restoration of the fountain base, along with street design improvements for safety and placemaking. We put together an RFQ, and it went out to about a dozen of pre-selected firms with experience in historic restoration work. That RFQ is closed, and the selection will happen next week. So we're really in the role of an accelerator, for this effort, which I think will be helpful. As David mentioned, we put together a project advisory committee who will be doing selecting the firm and overseeing the firm's work on this. So this is a pretty illustrious group of folks. John Tess, founder of Heritage Consulting, who's done around 1,700 projects in 43 states of historic rehabilitation projects and tax credits. He chaired the governor's task force on historic preservation. Jessica Engemann, who's served on the Portland Historic Landmarks Commission for 5 years and governor appointee to the Oregon Historical Assessment Review Committee. Andre Lightsey Walker, who's Policy Transformation Manager for Street Trust and a board member in Streetcar. So Deep also used to be a transportation planner for Metro. Milo Reed, who's actually, so I need to correct that, he's now chair of the Oregon Commission on Historic Cemeteries. And Milo is going to be working on a history of the fountain for us as well, which we're really happy about. James McGrath, who's an amazing transportation planner, but also has some roots in historic preservation. He wrote the original plan to create the Halpern Landscape Conservancy back when John Russell got that started. Jeff Joslin, who recently retired as Deputy City Planning Director from San Francisco, where he managed the city's urban design review, and historic preservation programs. And some of you may remember him from his 15 years running as the city person overseeing the Design Commission and the Historic Landmarks Commission. And then lastly, one of our board members who's been deeply involved in the elk issues, Suzanne Bishop. So with that, I'll take down the screen share and happy to answer any questions. We're very excited to be working on all of these projects, and we're very, very busy. And the registration for the Friends and Allies Summit is in the chat.
Thank you, Randy, for the thorough review of all the things that you're working on. Any questions, comments from Randy? For Randy.
Question up for sale, Randy, it's Casey. I'm wondering if you're going to be able to advertise that at Say Hey tonight.
That would have been a good idea, but I'm not going.
Sorry, I'm not either.
Yeah, but that would have been a good idea. You know, maybe I'll shoot a text to J.R. Lilly, who frequently MCs those events for Partners in Diversity. He's one of our board members. So I'll ping him and see if maybe he can give a little shout out for it.
If not, maybe you can contact Mari directly and she can advertise for you.
Yeah, no, thanks for the suggestion.
Any other questions, comments?
Okay, well, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. So with that, we'll move into the retreat that we have coming up. We have a meeting scheduled. Casey, Aaron, Sabrina, and Allie are meeting later this week to nail down final details. And then thank you to Saren and Michelle for helping us with logistics, including room and other operational things, but we'll nail down the schedule. Thank you, Aaron, for offering your home for the social activity the night prior. And we hope to get a final schedule out to everybody shortly thereafter. We know that asking a significant amount of time on your Saturday is a big ask, and we know that some people can't do it because of other obligations, either personal or other things. We recognize that and hope that you can still participate in the systems mapping exercise that I requested. I mentioned to Casey that I was hoping that some folks who maybe had stints as ski bums or other kinds of activities would be able to share that kind of experience and talk about how that led them to where they are now. And that can be either professionally, personally, geographically, however you define where you are now. So if there's any specific issues that you have questions of, or any specific agenda items you want to request for future meetings, I want to have some space for that. Corbin.
I have a request for future meetings that we use a lot of jargon and a lot of acronyms. And if we can try to be as legible and as explanatory as possible when we're using this for community members that may not be familiar with the language.
appreciate that. I wonder too, if maybe we could have like some kind of, cheat sheet that might be available. I don't know if there's something like that that is available through the community engagement team. I can follow up and see if something like that might be available. Because yeah, the use of acronyms can be, and I'm guilty of it as well, because it's a matter of, sometimes we get used to using the shortcuts we get used to using, but thank you for that reminder. Any other specific comments, either related to meetings in general or future meetings? If not, we may be able to return a little bit of your time. Erin.
I have just a quick thing, which is, very echoey. Okay. Sorry, there was a little echo there. I think, is it Saturday? That's the Gabriel Park. Is that this Saturday, Gabriel Park opening?
Yes,
6:30
yes.
a.m. to 12:30 p.m. I will be going. Email me if you are going to go, because then we can get to a little group meeting somewhere. So I'm going to go with my kids. So if anyone else is going to go, let me know. And Corbin's coming. Great. So hopefully we can get a few board members to go to that. That'll be really fun. Just want to throw that out there since we had a few extra minutes.
No, I appreciate that. No, yeah, if I can turn everybody's attention to the events and volunteer opportunities at the bottom of the agenda. The one that Erin referenced is the Gabriel Park Playdate. Commissioner Rubio and Director Long will be there to celebrate the new inclusive playground. That's May 14th, 10:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. And there are some other volunteer opportunities at Oaks Bottom, Irving Park Nature Patch, Overlook Park Nature Patch, and then Berrydale Park Tree Walk. And if there are no other items for discussion, I will return you back to your regularly scheduled days. And then, like I said, we will look forward to seeing everybody for our retreat when we get to hear about the update for Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland, work on mission vision for the board, talk about priorities and work planning for the board. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Something and give us time.